fine. It's fine.
Welcome, everybody, to the Life Between All or Nothing podcast. I'm Scott J, and we've got
Mary Kay.
Mary Kay. Mary, how are you, darling?
Wow, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm getting car sick.
Where are you? What are you doing?
What am I doing? I am traveling with Karen, my business partner. I'll give you a quick look. There you go, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Karen's waving to our podcast world. We're traveling. We just spent a couple of days on the road training from up in Rockledge near Melbourne, Florida. We went across Florida over to Tampa. We trained there for a couple of days. And now we have trained all day. We're driving home to Fort Lauderdale. And right now you are catching us as we are driving through Alligator Alley, the Everglades, on our way home.
Beautiful.
So if I get eated before the show's over, sell this tape. It's going to be worth a lot.
Too funny. It's nice and bright there. It's almost dark here.
Yeah, there's lots of brightness outside.
Nice.
Little cloud cover. But I am concerned I'm going to have to focus on engineering instead of, talking. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring our guest on. And Mary Kay's going to run the show for the night. And I'll be in the background. I'll
Surprise.
Kick back in when I can, as long as I know that we're going to survive our Crocodile Dundee adventure here. And as long as we don't go swimming with devil rays, we're fine. We're fine. What? Too soon? Too soon? Come on.
Oh, jeez.
You figure that guy was going to get stepped on by a heffalump or something, but no. He gets stung by the most peaceful fish ever created. All right. So, first of all, this guy's we've been talking about this guy for a little bit.
We have.
A lot, very interesting. And one of the things I love about, one of the things I love about doing the show with you, Mary Kay, is that we find people that all have different slants and different interests, and we're bringing them together and we're finding out about them. And it's all leaning towards just exploring and learning and never stopping, the adventure of life, right?
Oh yeah. And I love that, because as I discover and connect with other people and see, it opens up an entire world for me too. Like learning about our next guest and meeting him. I guess it was late 2021, maybe. He's a fascinating person it's like he's lived, I don't know how many lives, if you, and we probably won't get into his entire story today, but there's definitely lots of facets to the diamond that is our next guest.
I only have one life to live. I screwed it up. I'm not allowed any extras. I didn't get a mulligan. So
you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
I'm doing the best with what I got left to work with. That's all I can tell you.
Wow.
So what I'm going to do is, do you want to tell me something about Jock before we bring him in?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll read some of the introduction here. And so his name is Jock Brocas. He is considered an expert on grief. He's done a lot of research in that area, and he's one of the most respected authorities in that area. He's got groundbreaking work as a grief coach and as a grief mentor. He's also, through his work, he's providing a pathway. Oh, I see a comment there. Hi, Christopher. He's given a pathway of transformation to people going through grief as well as their families. He's also a celebrated speaker. He's an amazing speaker, captivating audiences on lectures related to grief, the afterlife, the paranormal, and beyond the grief research and public speaking. He's made some serious strides as an evidential medium, and I'll let him tell us what exactly that is when he comes on. He's been exploring the mysterious afterlife, and he's gained a lot of attention from media as well. And I think I'll let him tell us a little bit more about himself. And that was like a really abbreviated version of
Yeah.
everything that Jock is. There is so much more to this man. So that's
All right.
bring him
Well,
on.
without further ado, and we just had a comment from Christopher Rush, our good friend Chris, saying Jock rocks.
Yeah.
And he's also making fun of my studio. Um, Chris, I've officially screwed the pooch and am now living in my car. Deal with it. No, I'm kidding. We're all good. We're all good. All right, let's see. Let's bring Jock in. Bring him in. All right. Hey,
There we
Jock.
are.
Thanks for waiting,
Hi.
brother.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys. Actually, I don't know whether to blush or whether to kind of go shucks, listen to everything that Mary Kay was saying about me. But yeah, I've been around. I've had a paper round in Beirut, shall we say, these days.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, we're very happy to have you here, Jock. We're very happy that you're our guest tonight because the topic of grief is
Oh, yeah.
such a huge topic, and I'm already guessing that we're going to invite you back because we won't get to everything today.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Without a doubt. And I'm going to step aside. I'm going to engineer from the background. I am here. I'm going to keep track of the comments for you guys, and I'll keep back
great.
at the end. But as we're driving,
And he's frozen. All right, it's just you and I, Jock.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being our guest. And I gave a little bit of an introduction, and I read some of your bio, and I know you do so many things.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that I didn't mention that you'd like our audience to know about you?
Oh, wow. My
Just
goodness.
a little list.
Just a little list. What I think it's mostly what don't I do? I think I do too much. I'm I'm also the as you know, because you're part of our team. I'm the chief editor and chief Paranormal Daily News, which is an award-winning paranormal magazine, which is based on serious academic research as well as bringing in the sensational from different hauntings and stories in the paranormal. I'm a founder of various networks, in the holistic field and in the legal field. I've authored a number of books, as you know, which you see, just seem to have that in the background. Yeah, Powers of the Sixth Sense.
Power of the Sixth Sense, and
was the very first one.
That was your very first one. And then I have this one, which I love.
Yeah,
love this one.
That's the one I call my magnum opus.
Deadly Departed.
I'm now working on version 2 of that.
Oh, great!
So we've got part 2 coming out, which goes a lot deeper and stuff like that. But I also, as well as running the magazine, I am a columnist for Odyssey magazine in South Africa in the field of parapsychology, the afterlife, and grief. And I'm also not a columnist, but a visiting contributor to New Dawn magazine in New Zealand and Australia. So I get around a wee bit every now and again.
Oh, and I see Christopher's posting your link. So thank you so much for doing that, Christopher. That's great that you've put that up there for us.
Chris is awesome. I love Chris to bits.
He knows that Scott's driving. So you do a lot of things now. I know that you also do some leadership coaching, and like, how do you have time to do all these things?
I guess for me, time's a funny thing. Time's a fickle thing for me. It's something I'm very wary of. I don't like it. I'd rather think of the reality that in the spirit life, in the other side, there's no such thing as time and space. So I try to bring that concept into my life here. Not always in the right way, but if I start thinking about time, it gives me anxiety. And I don't like it. So I'd rather just, I trained in martial arts for a long, long time. And I remember our grandmaster saying that he doesn't think of time and doesn't wear a watch. He just gets on with what he has to get on with. And when he does that, he manages to achieve even more. And I remember when I was in the dojo and I was in Japan and training, I was like, that makes sense. So from that day, I didn't really think about time as being the constraint. I'd rather not consider that. You ask my wife about that though, and she'll probably say she'll probably say, "Oh, he's terrible with time. He doesn't." So, because I don't think about it, I try not to. In that way, I think I get a lot done because I just get on with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know what? I mean, get on with it is a great strategy to get things done. So you mentioned we were just talking about time and that you don't believe in time. Now, we're going to talk about grief.
Yeah.
So I want to dive right into something that's very common, which is the stages of grief and the sequence of the stages and the phases. And I know from some of the grief that I've experienced, I felt like I wasn't doing grief right, if that makes any sense. So I just want to know what is your position, and what do you want to tell us about the stages of grief, and what is grief, and
well, the stages of grief they don't exist. There's no such thing as the stages of grief. And one of the things that we must understand is this was a misunderstanding. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, when she talked about these, she never actually said there were stages of grief. She put forth a model of understanding as people were moving toward the passing over to the other side. So these were people that were in hospice that were dying. And she noticed a pattern in them. And so she created this you might call this unexpected type grief, anticipatory grief, essentially. And anticipatory grief can work between, family members, people who are, waiting on someone to die, or the individual. But then it became the framework. Now, the reality is that she got this idea from other researchers way back in the day. And I can't remember them off the top of my head, but if you go to my website, jockbrocas.com, I've written some extensive articles on there, and you can read about that. That she never did. So there's no such thing as a stage of grief. And here's the other thing that I'll shock your audience with. The greatest lie that has ever been perpetuated in this world is that we can recover from grief and that we can heal from grief. Both of those concepts are impossible to achieve. One, because grief, you don't recover from it at all, because it is not a drug and it is not an addiction, but it can be the catalyst to an addiction. And certainly from my years now, you got to remember that I'm not just coming into this understanding of grief just from reading a book. I've had over 2 decades working as a professional medium, which has been steeped in grief. But more to that point, I have, I've been brought up spiritually ever since I was a young kid. I spent most of my youth in a monastery with my uncle who was a monk. But to the point of understanding grief, I mean, I've lost so many people. I had terrible passing of my father. Him and I fell out before he passed. But even before that, my mother was always nursing people to their death. And as a young kid, I witnessed that. I witnessed cancer. I witnessed illness. I seen it every day. I would go in and pray with them. I would go in and sing to my family, because I know I was a bit of a chorister at the time. And I would go in and sing with them as they were dying, as they were getting ill. And so grief has been, I've had a relationship with it ever since I was a young boy. And not only just in family members, then in the military, I lost friends. I've lost, and I've even felt loss from child in my own life as well, for me and my wife. So it's been an integral part of my whole life. And so it's been something that I've been passionate about, to try and allay the suffering, or to educate people so that they get to understand it. So I'm coming from a lot of experience. So this is the thing that I understand, and this is the thing that I know, is that we can't heal from it either, because it will always be a part of our life. Just as the sun rises and sets in cycles, so too does grief, because it gives us life. You know, we continue on. We have this cycle of life, and grief is just part of that cycle. And
Wow.
so we'll never ever heal from it. So the reality is that we can't heal from it. We don't recover from it. So what do? We have to accept it and integrate it. And I've had a model that I've done research on, that I've worked with over the years with people. And so, you know, and the thing is, I'm talking about grief as in losing loved ones, but we've got to remember that grief touches every aspect of our life. And that's the other thing. It touches everyone, no matter who you are. Every single person will experience grief in some point of their life. Now, the other misunderstanding is that people will say, well, you know, you lose a child, it's the same as grief as losing a job. And there's a big argument there, and the psychology world is an argument there. The reality is that is completely wrong, because you cannot equate the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a child or a sibling or a parent, to losing a relationship, to losing a job, to losing something material. Whilst there is a thread of there's a relationship there, every aspect, every individual expression of grief has its own emotion and has its own journey. And so if there's many different ways of grieving, there's many different expressions of grief. None of them are the same, and none of them go through stages. Because the reality is that we can hit 5 stages in 1 minute, in 2 minutes. I've seen people who have lost loved ones who have gone through happiness, sadness, anger, every emotion going. And a lot of people say you recover, you have to understand that emotion. Emotions, again, are just like part of the cycles. It's just as the waves come in and out in the sea. We have to embrace our emotions as well, and realize that none of those emotions are bad.
Wow, Jock. I think that's a great point about emotions, that we have to experience them, not repress them, not expect to heal from an emotion, because it's like you said, it's part of the life experience. It's part of the human experience. Now, what about, so, you know, I'm thinking of a situation. Actually, no, you know what? I'm thinking of a personal situation. So I'm just going to come out with that. It's going to be a little heavy. It's going to be a little raw. So, you know, just warning our audience to bear with me here. So, you know, and you know, my dad is not well, and he's dialysis is keeping him alive.
Yeah.
And I go into the dialysis clinic with him. I see the other patients, and I look at him and I look at all of them, and I know that all of their time, my dad's and all of theirs, is coming to a close.
Okay. Yeah.
I know he's probably maybe got a year, 2 years left with us here in this form, this body.
Yeah.
So I guess, well, the question I want to ask you is there any kind of preparation for myself for this journey? I know it's a very selfish question.
Not at all.
Like, how do I prepare
obviously,
myself?
well, I mean, I kind of knew this was going to come up. So here's what I'm going to tell you, is that you're going through what's called anticipatory grief at the moment. You're anticipating that fact of him going over. And so in your mind, you're constantly of this, okay, so I have only got a finite amount of time. I've only got this amount of time. And you already said it, he's only got 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, what if I suggested to you that you took that away and you changed your mindset? And it's easy for us to say in coaching and everything else, you know, we change your mindset, change it to be more positive. This is something different. The mindset in grief is completely different. You don't just change it like you would do something to, you know, a mindset to lose weight or something like that, you know. But you're going through this process, you're anticipating this event. And so one of the things I would say is, you have an idea or a perception that his life comes to an end, and then there's going to be this loss, and he's not going to be there anymore. But if you start to put into your mind that this is not the end of his life. This is him making the journey and getting ready to transition to a new life where you're eventually going to go as well, right?
Mm.
So, and the way I like to think about it and the way I like to teach people is to, I say to a lot of people, don't think of your loved one as gone or going. Think of them as just going into the next room. Because
Mm.
when you have in your mind, they're just in the next room, it makes you feel there's a level of comfort there. There's a level of,
Mhm.
okay, so see, the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, is you can't die for the life of you. In fact, death is an illusion. You do not die.
Wow.
Like the cycle of life, like the sun rises and sets, it never dies. It just transforms every 24 hours. In fact, it doesn't really. We only perceive that it transforms, but it's constantly there, but it's going around its cycle, it's going around the earth. So it always exists. But the perception is that we see that it cycles because we say, well, it's born and it's raised and it's gone and it's died and it's gone. And
Yeah,
that's only just our perception that the sun sets and rises and goes away. But
you're right.
it's always there.
Mhm.
It's
It
even there
doesn't
when
set.
the moon is shining. When the moon is shining, it's always there.
We just can't see it.
So the reality is that our loved ones are just like the sun. They're always there. And
Mm.
they're just in the next room. And the other thing is that when you're anticipating such a transition, you in your mind you kind of anticipate things. It's negative. They're going through so much suffering. It's gone through so much
Yeah.
pain. I don't want them to do this. But when you got to remember that as human beings, as souls that we are built for storytelling. And this is the
Mhm.
time now for you to use that power of storytelling. Because that keeps not only the memory alive, but that brings in great positive affirmations. See Chris saying, "I have a
I
tattoo in
see
my right."
Chris.
What? Yeah,
Yeah, what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. Yeah, Chris,
it does,
absolutely.
and this is and really, it's a path to transformation, which we'll talk about as well, because it can be, as I've said many a time, grief can be your greatest teacher, or it can be your
Mm.
greatest nemesis.
Mhm.
You have the gift of choice to make that. Now you have to go. You're on a journey. This is the thing. You're on a journey of grief. You're always going to be journeying. The journey never
Mhm.
ends. But you can make it easier. You can either go on a treacherous road or you can take an easier road and enjoy the journey. And that's what I try to instill people, because it's these if you understand that cycles go, but it doesn't mean it's like a circle. There's a continuation. It doesn't break.
Mhm.
And so
Wow, so the
that's life.
connection. Yeah, the
Yeah.
connection doesn't break, and you're absolutely right that I was looking at it as an end of that connection, right? I was
Yeah.
looking I'm I'll have to wrap my mind around everything that you said, and I'll probably rewind this and watch it later. So
Tell
that's
stories, tell
there's
stories, sit with your dad and say,
I
remember this
do.
story. And that really does help things, or bringing his memory into stuff. And,
I
you know,
do.
storytelling is such a powerful way to
Yeah.
calm the soul, to calm a troubled mind.
That I'm so glad you said that, because that I drive him to dialysis and I drive him home from dialysis. So those are my special one-on-one times with my dad. And I do, draw
Yeah.
out stories from him, which are, um, wonderful for me that I'll pass down to my son as well, pass down to his grandchild.
Yeah. And never talk about his illness.
Yeah.
Because the illness, even though the illness is something that is being experienced in this moment,
Yeah.
in this material world, the reality is the illness is also an illusion, because even when he passes, or when he does go to that, he transitions over, illness doesn't exist. There is
Mm,
no illness, nothing like that. So you can
wow.
always have in your mind that what he's going through now is temporary.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
is only the sum total of the experiences and the choices and everything that's happened in this material world. But as we move and we transition to the next one, There's nothing over there that would cause that suffering.
Wow, that's a very comforting thought. Very
Absolutely.
comforting.
They're just in the next room.
Just in the next room. I love that. I'm gonna put that on a sticky. So
I
when I go
actually
down
send that.
that path.
I've got a post that I made because I run a group for and anybody who's grieving and wants to join that group, you can just go to
Mm,
my website and join it. It's free, and it's a group where I teach and I have classes and I help people through it. But I've got a group in there of widows who have lost their loved ones through COVID, and sometimes
mhm.
I put these little quotes on little pictures and things like that and send it to them, and it does that kind of thing. Just that little memory, that little reminder in your mind and
Reminder.
your thought. Yeah. And
Wow.
remember
So
always the suffering that you create is based on your expectations. And so you're
yes.
expecting the death and you're expecting, and the truth is you can't die for the life of you. So if you don't expect it, then you won't create the suffering inside your own mind because everything you create is created by your expectation.
Wow. That's very empowering as well for me. Not just comforting, but empowering to know that I have the choice to choose a different perspective.
You know, it's
And
true. Einstein had and I'll never, I always get this bloody quote wrong, but Einstein had said you can't solve a problem with the same level of thought that went into it,
yeah,
right? Now
yeah.
think about that, and even in your grief, you cannot go through your grief journey with the same amount of thought that is causing your suffering. So
Mhm.
we work to change the vibration of that thought, and the beauty is that we've been given the gift of choice. You
Yes.
can choose to make the grief journey the most transformational experience, or it to become your greatest nemesis.
Mm. Wow. So transformation and journey and
Mm,
the path that you do one-on-one coaching, and like you said, you have your group
yeah.
on grief. Um, Tell us more about the path. Tell us more about what else can you tell us about that journey? Um,
The journey of grief is something that when you first of all, when you get into your mindset that this is a journey, right?
mhm.
Most of us in this world get excited about going on a journey. You remember when
You're
you were a
right.
kid, right? You know, when you were a kid and you were like, "Oh, we're going on a journey," right? But then as we get older and then we get bombarded with the material world and everybody else's
Yeah.
expectations and trials and tribulations, it becomes there's not a joyful thing there. So we need to think back to we need to be childlike. When you're going on
Mhm.
a journey, we need to have that feeling like, oh man, I'm going on a journey. And that same positive expectation that we had and excitement on that journey. And it's the choice that when you go on a journey and you have this level of excitement that you're going to learn things along the route. And not always,
Mm.
sometimes you're going to come against, hurdles you need to get over and things, but that's all part of the experience. But as
Mhm.
you travel on a journey, and every journey that you've been on in life, every good positive journey you've been on in life, there is something, I will guarantee you, there is something inside of you that is transformed in
Mm.
every journey experience that you've had.
Wow. Wow. Learning so much. So, okay, so let's talk about um actually I promised our audience I would have you explain what is an evidential medium.
Oh, okay. All right. I get it. So, okay, all right. Get it. All right. So, an evidential medium is an individual that's able to give you empirical evidence
Mm.
that there's an afterlife. Now, there's many mediums out there that would give you generalized information. And the problem is that when people have an expectation of a mediumship or a mediumship reading or from a loved one, they'll say, your loved one's missing you, and um, or they've been around you and you've been feeling down and everything. That's kind of platitudes, really. I mean, that's kind of generalized.
Mm-hmm.
Evidence would be something that is very strong that maybe only they would know. So let me give you an example. What kind of evidence? I don't normally like giving examples in my own, but let me see. Okay, so I many years ago, when I was in Scotland, I was in the dojo, and a gentleman had come, and he'd been training with us, and he needed a lift home. And I would never normally give a sitting or anything to anybody, but I could feel there was something troubling him when he was in. And I remember taking him home, and all of a sudden his loved one came through, and I says, "Here, I've got your grandmother here, and her name's Bunty." That was her nickname. I don't know what her right name was. Turns out it was Elizabeth. Her nickname was Bunty. But anyway, so the whole idea was is that evidence was come through. It was very strong, but there was one thing in particular that I actually said is that she's mentioned that there's a letter on a gravestone that is from a family member that you haven't seen, and they didn't realize, and so he denied it was nothing because it, there was nothing there. He said there's nothing there. There's nothing. I said no. She's adamant. There's been a letter recently that's been placed. There's something or a card or a letter, and she's talking about the gravestone. And they had never been up to the grave. They'd never been up to visit for a long time. Well, they went back, and it intrigued his mother. So the two of them drove up, and they went to the gravestone. And there was a letter there that was in a plastic bag that was fabloned, and it was and they didn't even know it was by a relation that they didn't even know they had, that had been missing for 20 odd years. And that made connection with them again. And the only way they did, the person had been searching for them for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they found that letter and corroborated the evidence. So
Wow.
evidence, so everybody's evidence is unique,
Mm-hmm.
but the evidence will mean something to you. But it will stand up to science, because how would I have known that? In the
Yeah,
theory of
you wouldn't.
consciousness, or even connecting to, as they would say, super consciousness, which I don't really go for that theory, because everybody denied it and had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So a second example would be when we had someone come to visit in America, and loved one came through for a friend that was connected to a friend back in Wales, and they'd had no information. So the information came in, and we wrote it down on a napkin, and
Oh, wow.
she took all the information back in the napkin, and everything was absolutely spot on. So so the level of evidence that you give is not just generalized to your feeling while you're going to the dentist, or
Right.
you've lost a loved one and they want you to know they love you. It's got to have a pattern. And so when I teach students about mediumship, I teach them
Mm-hmm.
to understand, like a pyramid. I call it a pyramid of evidence. So there's a baseline evidence, and then there's the next level, and the next level, and the next level, and every one of them have a relationship that make up the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a story, and the story has to add up. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people out there that claim they're evidential mediums, but they don't actually understand what evidence is. And I wrote an article about that in another magazine I have.
Yeah. Wow. You've written a lot of articles.
I have read, I write extensively. Yeah, I do.
You're a writer. And I just want to bring up this book again. Um, You're Deadly Departed, because this is the do's and don'ts and dangers of the afterlife communication. And I remember when I'm going through this, and even thinking about things like automatic writing.
Yeah,
I've heard of it, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And then when I read, what it really is, I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to mess with this kind of thing because I don't know
yeah,
what I'm doing. Um, and I think a lot of people do, and a lot of people have ideas about communicating
yeah.
with the afterlife, and they want to, invoke the spirits and all that kind of thing. I suggest that they get your book,
Yes.
Deadly Departed. What do you have any comments about that? Anything that you would want to share about?
Well, I understand why people. Here's the thing: there's a lot of people who go through grief, and they want to communicate with the other side, and that's wonderful. And
Yeah,
I teach them how to do that in a safe manner. But you've got to
safe.
remember that you wouldn't go out your home and leave the door open to all and sundry to just come in and have at it and come into your home and steal everything. Well, essentially, if you don't know what you're doing, it's like opening a door and allowing
Yeah.
that to happen. And like anything in life, there's dangers in the afterlife as there is here. And there's
Mm-hmm.
many organizations, mediumship organizations, that do not like what I espouse. They don't like what I say. They would think that everything in the garden is absolutely rosy and there's no such thing as negative spirits or anything out there. But there is. And whether you believe in them or not, your belief
Mm-hmm.
is not does not really anchor the reality, whether they're there or not. What you suggest, or if you don't think they're there, their existence is not uh governed by your belief.
Yeah, it's not
So
dependent on whether I believe it or not. It's still
no.
there.
And the reality is, it is there because there's many examples of that throughout history. There's many examples of negative spirits, and when it comes to grief, sometimes there's a lot of people who are really grieving, and they get themselves into trouble because they start to dabble in things they don't understand, and that can be a problem, and that can lead into a lot of mental imbalances and even potential psychosis. And then we have people who that are grieving so much that they will do anything and everything to try and communicate. And then if it doesn't happen and they don't understand the mechanics of it, they think that they're failing. And so they start to get more depressive. They go into what we call PGD, oh, bloody hell. I actually freaking can't remember the name now. Never mind. But PGD, which is disorder, which is in DSM-5, and it will say that the grief, that type of grief, lasts for over 6 months, and then they would label you with that. But that's not true, because you can be grieving for an awful long time. You don't have to be labeled by a mental imbalance. So it's like post-traumatic stress, and how you label it and how people understand it, and it's kind of like that. So I would say that there's a danger in them, and then they can cause themselves some mental imbalance because they feel like they're failed, and all the while that they're feeling they're failing, their loved ones are trying to actually communicate with them and sending them signs. They just don't understand the mechanics of it. So even when I work with people, I try and educate them, not just on the grief, but how the mechanics of the afterlife and the spirit world work, and how it can help them, all at the same time as understanding mental imbalances like psychosis and PGD and the different level, different types of grief and expressions of it, so I can help them through that. But again, I'm talking here about people who are losing loved ones and stuff like that, but there's still other elements of grief that do that. But when we're talking about the afterlife or the dangers that's associated there, I've lost count of the amount of people who have been so struck in their grief that have caused themselves some issues because they've gone dabbling without understanding it.
Yeah, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous to do something when you don't know what you're doing, or to have somebody that's not a professional like you helping
PGD,
them.
sorry,
PGD.
prolonged grief disorder just came to me. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. I love it.
Terrible memory.
These things come back.
Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, so have people in that stage where they're so far gone and they're desperate to have some kind of communication, some kind of sign, something, and then they employ, I would say, people that are not professionals, that are not they're not like you, right? Like, they're not professionals. They haven't researched. They don't have an understanding of all the other things, and they take advantage of these people, and then it ends up in damage, and it damages not just them, but the family that's around them, because it could be the whole family involved.
One
So,
of the big problems that we have in mediumship and understand, and I'm very scientific when it comes to that, and there's how sciencey I am.
You're a skeptic.
I'm very skeptical. Sometimes my wife thinks you're too much into science, which is why I do a lot of academic research and academic study. and I'm currently on a master's and PhD path at the moment in my field of choice. So it's
Nice.
there's a lot of misunderstanding, and so when it's unfortunate, there's a lot of charlatans out there, and the problem is, and even people that have trained. See, here's the thing: when as me as developing as an evidential medium, it's taken years and years and years. I sat in Circle, I developed in Circle, I did it the old school. Nowadays, with everything online, you can go on, do a course, and hey presto, you're a medium. Now, here's the danger in that: someone who is suffering through grief, someone who is really suffering, perhaps in borderline and PGD psychosis. Let's say, for instance, a woman who's lost her son, and this is a real example because the woman actually did come to me, and I'll give you what happened was she went to see a medium, and the medium was giving her a reading and everything. I don't think the medium had been highly developed or had sat in anything like that developed. And she would say, oh, your son's not happy with you, with the way you're looking after yourself. You're not eating so much. And it doesn't matter whether some of the evidence she gave was good to the woman, the mother who was suffering. The mother hears the negative aspect only and that throws themselves into a spiraling level, even deeper grief. So as a professional, you need to understand how to discern information and discern the message to be able to give that in the right way so that it lands, and it lands in a way of comfort. So, you wouldn't say that. And so you need to be able to have that experience and knowledge and understanding and wisdom on how to be able to pass on that information and understand that the words that you choose, because it's a true saying, the words can cut deeper than the sword.
Wow.
Because it may cut your skin, it may chop your arm off, but the words can hurt your soul.
Wow. Yeah. It's a big responsibility.
It's a massive
for somebody.
responsibility.
Yeah. Massive.
Massive.
Oh, I see Scott coming on in the dark.
Yeah, we are
in the darkness.
We're in the dark. Gators are everywhere. We're running for our lives. And I got to say that I really feel bad because Jock, listening to you and your breadth of knowledge, especially when it comes to debunking the falsities of the stages of grief and really talking about it for what it really is. I give you a lot of credit, my brother.
Thank you.
Great stuff. I definitely want to make sure that we have him back, Mary Kay, because I got to be on the show. I got to be talking about this because I would love to talk about a lot of what I see in working with addictions and other mental health issues where people become grief dependent to get all of their feelings from grief.
Yes.
And, and I think that's something that bears talking about. Have you had some experience with that, Jock?
Absolutely. Some people get so comfortable in their grief that there's an imbalance in them that they can't face reality, they can't face the world, and they can't face themselves, and they get so comfortable. And it reminds me of the story of the lobster. In order, if you're going to grow, the lobster is one of the only crustaceans that it starts to feel uncomfortable. In order for it to survive and to continue in the world, it retreats and it sheds its shell, and then it grows a bigger shell so that it can grow inside of itself. And that's a great analogy for us in grief. When people get too comfortable in their shell and all they want to know is pain, and sometimes it's because they're looking for, and they can get comfortable in their addiction because it's what they know and they don't want to face anything. But when they're comfortable in their grief and their pain, it's also, there's a little bit of selfishness in there because they want to be the center of attention, and they want to feel that they're, they love their sorrow because they like the way everybody's treating them. But the reality is, someone who's on a journey doesn't want to hear platitudes, and they want to be able to talk about their grief. Here's the one thing, Scott and Mary, that you'll never hear me say to someone: I'm sorry for your loss. Never in a million years will I say that. When someone tells me they've lost a loved one, I will go straight into storytelling and I will say, tell me about them. Tell me something funny about them. Tell me about their life. What is it that you remember about them that sparks joy in your soul and your heart? I don't want to say I'm sorry for them because I know they're on the other side and there's no such thing as death. They're only in the next room and they're listening. And so I want to share in their story. I don't want to share in their pain.
I love that. That is absolutely brilliant. You know, and the people who become grief dependent, and I'm sure there's other words for it, but that's the phrase I like to use. You know, they also start to equate sympathy and empathy with love, and so that's what they're getting from other people.
Yeah.
And you know, so there's always drama. There's always this sadness. There's always, and these are the people who, you know, if I stub my toe, they'll stand in the corner and cry about it. They'll adopt pain from others, and it becomes almost comical how quickly they can suck the pain out of you and just take it on themselves. And it's not a martyr. It's nothing as classy as being a martyr. It's simply a very selfish act in order to extricate feelings from other people. You know,
It is, and I think it's important to educate people. It's more important to educate people and how they're able to connect with someone who is grieving and understand their grief, because in society, the thing is, in society, we are terrified of grief.
Yeah. Agreed.
We won't face it, and we're terrified to face anyone who's going through grief. But if we understand a little bit more and we come across someone who is comfortable in their pain, maybe, just maybe, we can sow a seed of transformation in them by the way that we connect with them on a deeper level.
Well, my friend, I'll tell you that I've experienced two things in my life. I've experienced going through life with no feelings whatsoever and going through life with a whole lot of feelings. And I'll tell you what, I would rather stand with grief within me than to feel nothing, because feeling nothing is not a respite. It is a torture. It is a torture. Feeling grief, it makes me feel alive. It reminds me, sure, I'm going to miss certain aspects, or there's things that are just, but it's more of that kind of roll call to, hey, it's time to reflect. It's time to absorb all these gifts that you were given.
Yeah.
You know, you can spend all the time curled up in a ball, you know, eating chicken noodle soup and crying to yourself, or you could use that time to reflect upon the gifts, upon all these things that have happened, and realize that the grief you're feeling is because you were able to truly love something in your life, and that's a gift. That is a gift.
And how you serve, because here's the thing: there's a saying from a very famous spirit guide named Silver Birch, which says the greatest gift that you can give humanity is the gift of service. And I'm all about service. Those who know me know that I'm about service. And one of the things that I say to people who is grieving is, you can turn your pain that you perceive you're going through and turn it into a beautiful gift of service. Because when you go on that journey to grief and you choose, you know, I have the three model. The model that I have is awareness, acceptance, and choice. Become an awareness of your grief, accepting it and integrating it into yourself, embodying it in mind, body, and soul, and then having the choice for it to be the greatest transformation in your life. Here's the thing: it won't just be the greatest transformation in your life. You will be the catalyst as you serve others, and it will be the greatest transformation in their lives as you become the gardener that seeds the gardening and teaches them to cultivate those seeds of transformation in their grief.
Wow.
That's a beautiful concept, Jock. Beautiful. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
No, I'm just saying I'm blown away. And you know, we're coming to the end of the show.
Oh, wow.
And definitely, you know, Jock, I'm going to put you on the spot. You will come back and join us again, will you?
100%. I want to hear about your alligator. But yeah, absolutely. I would love to come back on.
If you're looking at my picture now, I've gone from alligator hunting to I am now reenacting a scene from Apocalypse Now with Marlon Brando coming out of a cave.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
So,
too funny.
And Mary Kay, as always, you are brilliant. You're amazing. You are you're a wonder every time I get to listen to you, and for you to just pick up and just do this, always you are a partner that anybody would love to have. I'm glad I have you. You know,
Oh,
so
thank you. I
Thanks for
appreciate you
sharing your
too.
thanks for sharing your personal story, because that takes courage.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
Jock. Thank you.
Absolutely. We will do this soon. Mary Kay and I'll get together. We'll pull out the calendar. We'll give you a call, Jock. We're going to get you, and we're going to have some. We'll have some fun. We'll do maybe a super show. The super terrific happy grief show is what we'll do.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
That's fantastic.
Beautiful.
Scott, it's been a pleasure, and I'm glad you're still safe and you haven't got new alligator boots on yet.
Yeah, not yet. So before we go, I just want to ask Jock, is there any final words that you want to leave our audience with? Is there anything that you want to say to them?
If the greatest gift that I can impart with anyone out there is to understand that you live a miracle every day. God gives you a gift of life, and it's up to you how you live that life. And you can be the supporter, you can be the friend, you can be anything to anybody who's going through grief, and even in yourself. You have a choice in how you live life. You have a choice in how you embrace grief. Do not let it be your nemesis. Let it be your greatest transformation, and shine a light in the darkness where other people are frightened to tread.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Speaking of shining a light in the darkness, Scott. Oh boy.
Well, Mary Kay, do you have any final thoughts you want to wrap up with?
Final thoughts? Yeah, I'm actually full of many thoughts. Very grateful to you, Jock, for coming on today and for addressing some of the thoughts and some of the fears and some of the expectations that I have about things that are going on that I'm experiencing. So
And look, you know me, I will say, anybody out there, if you have a question about grief, if you're stuck, then I mean, you can connect with me on social, on Instagram at Spiritual Medium. I'll answer that, or through my website. Or you can, if you're grieving, you can come and join our support community, and you can get all the help that you want.
Beautiful.
Right.
That's a great thing.
So everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us for another edition of The Life Between All or Nothing, the dark and dirty version right here. I want to thank our guest, Jock Brocas. I want to thank Mary Kay, as always, for being one of the beacons and the lighthouses in my life that makes my life happy. And of course, to all the people out there, just remember, every day, folks, do one thing nice for somebody else, two things nice for yourself. You'll never have a bad day. For all of us right here at The Life Between All or Nothing, we'll catch you next time. God bless and take care.